1 minute, you're a thriving gun store in southern Iowa. The next minute, everything's for sale at an auction. The story of the Stanley Hunting Center. Hi, everybody. I'm John McLaughlin. Welcome once again to Warrior Wednesday. And we've had a lot of our Iowa Firearms Coalition members ask us what is going on down in Lacona with the Stanley Hunting Center. And we're going to kind of walk you through that whole story today. Scott is joining us from what used to be the gun store behind you and now looks like a garage. Tell me what has happened, just a dramatic change of events in southern Iowa over the last couple months.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you giving me the chance, and hopefully we can help other gun shops maybe not have this happen to them. But
right.
So basically in October of 2021, the ATF showed up at my door to do an audit. It was the first audit that we have ever had. My wife and I started with our FFL just under her and I because of our local Pheasants Forever chapter, actually. But we'd had that license for about 15 years, give or take. And then when we started doing a little more selling and actually decided to open a shop, we changed it to an LLC. Mm-hmm. So we started that in 18. So basically the ATF showed up to audit like they do out of the blue. And they went through our books for just the year 2020. Mm-hmm. And we're going through things with them, and they're looking at things and basically saying, well, we'd like you to do this differently. This isn't how you should do it. And I'm like, well, this is how I've been doing it ever since I started, almost 20 years ago, based on the agent I met with at that time said, here's how we want you to fill out your book. So I would tell people, first of all, it's about interpretation on how they look at things. So that's the scary part in my mind. But long story short, they went through the audit. They found some things that they said they wanted to look at. Like I said, that was in October. I hadn't heard anything about mid-December. I sent an email to the auditor asking them what was going to go on. Can you give me any kind of update? Well, at that point in time, they said, well, that was about the time when the government was getting ready to shut down. They thought, well, it didn't, but they said, well, we probably won't do anything until after the first of the year. So it'll be in January. So I waited till actually the end of February, I think it was. Contacted her again. Oh, we're not done yet. And I'm like, can you give me any idea? Well, they don't tell you anything. Let's just put it that way. So about the end of March, I think it was, maybe the first part of April, they contacted me and wanted to set up a meeting and go over what they had found. So that meeting happened over just a phone call, and basically went over things that they wanted us to do differently. Now, there was not going to be any fines or nothing from that standpoint. So basically under the impression that the audit was basically done at that point in time. Well, then lo and behold, a few weeks later, we get a letter from the director of the Kansas City region telling us that they were revoking our license for 7 errors that we had in our books. 7 out of, if you look at the number of forms that they looked at and the number of fields that we had to review, we figured there was about 55,000 fields that we could have possibly done wrong. Wow. But we had 7 errors. So we really didn't know anything about this zero tolerance policy at that point in time. Found out about that about a week or two later. Well, I responded to the letter telling them, well, because I had called, I guess I should say, I called the office and said, what can I do to stop this? And the gentleman I spoke to was supposedly second in command under the director and said, well, he's a reasonable guy. If you just write up a letter saying, here's what you're going to do to fix these errors, they won't happen again, so on and so forth. So we did that and basically said, none of these were malicious. None of the errors that we had affected somebody getting a gun that wasn't supposed to have a gun. It didn't affect the traceability of any gun. It was things like, well, an example, one of them was a customer forgot to date their form. We missed it. We dated our book. We dated our part of the form. We just missed the customer didn't date their part. Yes, an error, but again, didn't affect really anything except for what the date wasn't there. Another type of error I had was, and this one was on me, I had to run a background check for someone. They didn't have a permit or anything. So I ran a background check. Well, you enter their driver's license in the actual deal. And now I printed it out. Everything came back as a proceed. Well, I forgot to write the driver's license on the 4473. I wrote Iowa driver's license on the piece. I just forgot to write the number. I wrote the expiration date. I just didn't write the driver's license number.
Right.
But I printed off the form that they had said proceed, and the driver's license number was on that. Well, they didn't care. It wasn't on the form. So it was stuff like that basically did it. So I sent that letter to the ATF, certified, telling them here's what we were going to do differently. And that guy that I spoke to said, probably just tell you that, we'll go on from there. Not going to be a big deal. We don't do anything with these. You're not doing anything malicious. Okay, so about a week later, got a letter back saying they were moving on with the revocation. Wow. We could have a federal court hearing for the deal, and they would let us know about that. Well, I called back again and said, can you tell me what's going to happen from here? Well, we're really busy right now. It's probably going to be 3 or 4 days before somebody gets back to you, let you know what the process could be. Well, I still haven't heard back from them. That was back in May. Wow. Not heard a word since then from anybody since then. Well, my wife and I basically made the decision because we had talked to several people, found out we really weren't going to be able to afford to fight. Even if we won, we thought we were probably going to be losers in the whole scheme of things based on what we've been told by talking with several people. So we decided that we would go ahead and just tell people that we were going to be closing, and we got the word out. Customers responded with, it was amazing. Within the first 3 or 4 days of opening, after we said we were closing, we had basically were down to about 15 guns from 100 and something. I don't remember what it was. A lot of our ammo was gone. We just didn't have that much left, and decided, like you just said earlier, that we would work with Putney Auction in Indianola and see if we could just sell the rest of it that way, because we just didn't have a whole lot left to stay open. So it's pretty much happened about that fast. Everybody said that. Everybody we spoke to said, well, you're getting a raw deal. They don't close you down for those kinds of things. Well, then we found out about that zero tolerance, policy, or I don't know if it's an executive order or just a directive to the ATF, what it was from the administration, but that pretty much is what sunk us from that standpoint. So I've told several different gun dealers that I've spoken to, and at this point in time, I'm like, please go back through your books and make sure that you can find anything that you can find. Go back and do whatever you can so that you don't have that kind of thing, because I'm afraid they'll do the same thing to you. So I think, and then there was someone from the Iowa Firearms Coalition that lives around the Knoxville area that has stopped in my shop a couple of times, a fly. He had told me that he had heard of a few gun shops between here and the city of Ottumwa that was happening to them. So it's out there. It's happening pretty frequently from what we understand, but that's pretty much our story, John.
Wow, that's incredible. I work with another 3-letter agency. Fortunately, it's not ATF, but FAA. And so I'm much like you. I do a ton of paperwork, for pilot applications. And in that government agency, if I miss a date or forget the middle name or something, they just say, hey, we noticed this. Can you make a pen and ink correction, resubmit it? It's not like we shut down your whole business.
Right.
It's just unbelievable. And what I heard from folks in Southern Iowa is like, these are the folks when we got a free gun or whatever, we won the raffle at Pheasants Forever, you'd handle all the FFL paperwork for that. You're like an integral part of what's happening conservation wise in Southern Iowa. And now it's just like shut off.
Yeah, we did. So we did the Warren County Pheasants Forever. There's an Iowa Capital chapter, which is in Polk County, a Northern Polk chapter, Northern Polk County. Madison County, we were going to be picking them up. We did Jasper County. Those are all Pheasants Forever organizations. We also did the Two Rivers Ducks Unlimited that's in Indianola area, the Warren County area, and then also the Ducks Unlimited in the Sheraton area. And then also with, excuse me, the Indianola High School, the Southeast Warren High School, and then the any other organization that was using a gun as a raffle or whatever, they came to us and we did all that stuff for free, went to the banquets, did all the transfers that night so that people didn't have to make an extra trip and that kind of thing. So it did throw a monkey wrench into a lot of these chapters trying to find somebody really quickly, which is really kind of weird. That's how Julie and I got into it when we were, in the Pheasants Forever chapter for Warren County, that we lost our FFL back then because he was getting out of it. And we just decided to see if we could do it. And that's how we started. But so, it started from that. But yeah, there's quite a few of these organizations that are now looking for places. I think everyone has found somebody now, but it's not going to be like it was with us where we went to the banquet and that kind of thing. They're probably going to have to go to a shop or go to a store or something to go get their guns now. So
it sounds like what the government is forcing people into is like having to subscribe to some service where they're going to double check your books, or more cost, more oversight, more, just looking over your shoulder all the time if you're going to try to open a business or run a business like you folks have for so long.
Yeah, I think they're trying to push people to the type of system like a Bass Pro Shop or a Shields has, where you do it on an iPad or a computer. And that system will not allow you to miss a field. And then it transfers it directly to a 4473, and it transfers to an online A&D book for that, for that business. So everything is done, I'll call it automatically for them. So that it takes the human error out of it. But we looked into that a while back, and it was so expensive to get it going, for buying the system, the cloud storage on a monthly basis. I didn't feel like that my small business could afford that. Obviously looking in hindsight, it's like really couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford not to do it because it, was the end of me basically. But, would we have been able to do it and maintain it and keep our prices the way they were? I don't know if we could have or not, but
what are your community members saying? Your customer base that you've been selling Henry rifles and pistols and ammo and everything down there for a long time, and now suddenly there's this vacuum. I mean, obviously on Facebook, I've seen them rally to your support, but what are you hearing the stories personally?
I have a lot of upset customers. Several customers wanted to start a GoFundMe page. And I'm like, we don't want you to spend your money, your time to try and help us out. I mean, we made the mistakes, we're going to own up to it. But yes, a lot of people are very angry. I can't tell you the number of people that we heard from either stopping in saying, hey, I just come to buy a box of ammo. Didn't really need it, but trying to do something to help you out or whatever. So we had a lot of that happening. We had a lot of customers that were way more angry than that. Several customers talking to, calling their congressman, writing their congressman, calling. I had one of them that called the governor's office. So we've had a lot of people that have said they've done lots of things to try and help, but obviously it's out of their hands. But yeah, very upset. And even several customers admitting, for a small community, you guys supported a lot of things. The Little League, we supported that, all the donations and things we made to the fire departments. And like I said, people were very angry about that, not to mention the sales tax that, that we paid to the state, obviously for the business too. So that now doesn't come because there's the local option sales tax for our county that now that doesn't go to our town. So our little town needed that little bit that was coming to them. So
well, I can tell you from our perspective with Iowa Firearms Coalition, we were just contacted the other day from Senator Grassley's office asking for more information on these ATF problems in Iowa. So you're likely the originator of that. So at least this, the Iowa senators are looking at this, especially Grassley's office. It may not help you. Maybe it'll help in the future with shutting some of this down. But what does this give you? Not getting too political, but kind of the future of our country, how, the Second Amendment is under attack, and where are we going as a nation when our ATF and these other agencies just seem like they can just do stuff, without congressional approval, without really giving you, the benefit of a doubt. I mean, were there any of your 4473s that resulted in somebody getting a gun who shouldn't have had one?
No, absolutely not. There was none of that whatsoever. And that was the thing that, I kind of put back in my letter back to the ATF director saying, nothing affected traceability. No
Right.
one that shouldn't have had a firearm got a firearm. I could understand if it was that kind of thing, but I mean, they're just, I mean, like they said, we heard from someone in your organization that they had our case looked at by some people that they have in ATF and said, well, they don't normally shut down for this. This is something that just started, obviously,
Yep.
with I'm going to say it flat out, the Biden administration.
Yep.
I don't know if it's him directly. It probably is. I don't know if, in my opinion, if he's coherent enough to do that. I'm going to say that out loud, but somebody there is obviously anti-gun. They can't get the legislation passed that they want, so they're looking at it at other ways. They obviously have attorneys or people looking at any way they can possibly affect gun sales or ammo sales or whatever. I mean, you look at small gun shop like me, being in Southern Iowa, about the only gun shop around for several miles. There's a couple other that are out there, but you look at 15 to 1,800 guns a year that we sell. They shut us down. That's a big dip in the market. I have a lot of customers that will not go to a big box store to buy a gun. They just don't want to do it. And so they just will do without. And so that's a big dent to our industry as far as I'm concerned. And like you said, politically, I just don't understand the whole thing. I guess I'm just a simple guy, but I don't know how they can let something like that happen. And I think it just slipped in. They snuck it through. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing that any of our senators or anything probably even had an idea that it was going on, because they basically backdoored it as far as I could see.
Yeah. You mentioned something other critical a bit ago. You sold a lot of guns. You're in a small town, and small towns need your tax money. And now that's just vanished. I mean, you were a pretty significant tax base for your area, weren't you?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's a little local bar in town, that's the Bar and Grill, the local convenience store that used to be a co-op. I mean, they sell gas, but that's it. I was, and my sales tax might be as big as some of them. I don't know what their sales are. I know I wrote a pretty big sales check to the state every
right.
quarter. So, it's a big hit to sales tax for just our town and the county overall. So it's just gone.
Yeah. Are you guys going to be okay after this? I mean, you've kind of lost your revenue stream. Is there just moving on into retirement, or how do you move forward after a big hit like this?
Well, I mean, I had planned for retirement from my other job. I worked for a big company in Des Moines for 35 years. I had retired from that last October. So the income that was coming from the store wasn't anything that we had planned on. It was just extra income that it was getting to be pretty significant, in a retirement phase. My wife still works for the post office here in town, but it's only a part-time job. But we're okay from that standpoint. So, I mean, we had planned well enough our time, as we worked, that, we're fine from that standpoint. But yeah, we were able to buy a lot of other little things that we weren't, or bigger things even, that we weren't thinking we were going to get because of that. So now we'll just, we'll have to stop doing some of that, but we're still fine from a living standpoint and being able to do things we want to do, I believe.
Okay. What would you say to folks that are maybe considering joining the Iowa Firearms Coalition, or thinking about voting for our Second Amendment protection, which is going to be on the ballot in November, to try to, put a stop to some of this monkey business that the government's coming in and doing things? And so far, a lot of the states have just, raised their hands and said whatever.
Yeah, people would come in and ask what they could do to help or whatever. And my first line to everybody was just, and I never used to do this. I voted pretty much based on a person, but I said, just go vote straight Republican. I don't care how you vote, because at least we're going to keep our Second Amendment and they're going to be looking out for us. But it doesn't look like the other side's doing anything to help us. And people thought I was joking, but I really wasn't. I've talked to a lot of people about that. I think anybody that isn't part of the Iowa Firearms Coalition or the NRA or any organization that's helping from that standpoint, I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I think you need to do that because that money is going to fight these people that are, I'm going to call them anti-gun, anti-firearm, anti-ammunition, whatever you want to call them.
Anti-freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's a responsibility, I think, that we have to do. If we're going to keep it and keep it in our lifetimes, not to mention, you know, my nephews, I'm just getting my nephews into hunting. They're 14 years old. Their father doesn't hunt at all, but I've been taking them for the last 2 or 3 years. And so I'm getting them started. I don't know what's going to be like for that generation if we don't do something now.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And you mentioned the NRA. We're the Iowa affiliate for that, obviously. And the New York case, that took over $2 million to bring that to the Supreme Court to try to get a shell issue back in New York State. Obviously, they're trying to unwind that all out there. But, you know, you think about joining, you know, your grassroots organization like IFC or the big groups like the NRA, and basically without funding, we can't move these things to court cases and try to prevent this gradual erosion of rights that's taken place, not just in Iowa, but so many states.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story today. You know, I wish it had a better outcome. I wish the government would change their mind and say, you know, here's your FFL back. We're sorry this happened, but we all know that's not going to happen.
They're not going to do that.
No, this current administration. So keep praying for the future. Keep your spirits up. And number one, thanks for all you've done, not just for Second Amendment, but for conservation and all of our outdoor groups down there in Southern Iowa.
Well, I think we appreciate that very much. Appreciate all our customers too.
All right. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, sir.